Hello, welcome to When the Smoke Clears. I am the Recovery Plug. What's going on, everybody? Hope everybody's doing good. I know I am. Today's another great day, another great day in sobriety, recovery, and spirituality. It's another great day to be alive. What's going on? Man, well, you know how I like to get my video podcast always started with a moment of silence, followed by the serenity prayer for the addict who still suffers and anyone in the struggle. So if you would, please, a moment of silence. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. All right, well, let's get started. Okay, man, how's it going, everybody? Hope everybody's doing great. Today's, another day, in the recovery and spirituality. It's good, man. I wanted to talk to you guys about, I guess, here the last few videos, I guess I've been doing a lot of talking about meditation and how that works and in my personal journey of recovery and in my life in general. And there was something that I read in this book that I'm currently reading, and I wanted to share that with you guys and talk a little bit about that, and I'll share with you how I relate what I read in my personal journey of recovery, spirituality, and positivity. So let me read a little bit of what I'm talking about here, and then we'll elaborate a little bit more as far as my personal journey goes to what I read. So I'm going to get these glasses on and get to it. Okay. Well, again, the book that I'm currently reading is the Dharma of Modern Mindfulness, and this is a book on the MBSR, techniques and teachings. You know what I mean? And for those of you who don't know what MBSR stands for, it's a mindfulness-based stress reduction, and it's just a form of meditation and techniques and stuff like that. But in this one page here, and this is the book here, so those of you guys who want to check it out, and it's a good book. It's by Beth Ann Mulligan, and it's a really, really good practice to do this. But anyway, on this one particular chapter here in this book, it says it's talking about giving up a little bit of something to meditate, and I'm just going to read here. It says, I spoke about the kind of time commitment it takes to participate in the program. A woman said, I can see if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to give up something else. I was struck by the wisdom and foresight in this, because often we think, can't I just cram one more thing in? I don't want to give anything up. I talk about this in class 1, asking participants, what would you be willing to let go in order to make the time to meditate? Watch a little less television, not check Facebook so often, simply simplify in some small or large way. The question, besides being practical and realistic, speaks to the practice of renunciation. And that word, renunciation, when I hear that word, it's funny because the first thing that comes to my mind is Eddie Murphy. You know what I mean? And in the movie Coming to America, Eddie Murphy is, has that one scene where he says that he'll give everything up to marry this one girl, right? And he's like, I renounce my kingdom. I renounce, the being the prince of Zamunda or whatever he said, but he uses the word renounce, and it is the same thing as renunciation, and that means you're giving something up, and and in the context of addiction and going to a road of recovery and spirituality, you're going to find out that you're going to have to give up some things. You know what I mean? That's inevitable. You will definitely have to give up something, if not all things. And I know this to be true because in my personal journey, I, you know, when I was in the dark world of addiction, I was doing and thinking very negatively, doing things that were not, healthy, that were not, some of the things I did weren't illegal. They weren't legal, and some of the things I did were just, chaotic. You know what I mean? And it was just living a world and a path of nothing good. You know what I mean? And ultimately led to this destruction of my health, my life, and I had to decide, personally that, I had to give up every single aspect of my life at that point. You know what I mean? If I wanted to get into this world of positivity, spirituality, and recovery. Because I know that if I would have kept just one single negative thought, one single negative action that I was doing at that particular time in my life, that was going to be one reservation that I brought with me. That means that that's one thing that I would leave there, a way out just in case. You know what I mean? That's one thing that I would have been like, okay, well, if it don't work, then I can just, go back. So if I knew that was there, then that negative thing was going to linger in my mind, and eventually it would have surfaced up, and I would have jumped into it, because that's just who I am. I have this addictive personality, and if I start really thinking about the use, then by golly, that's where I'm going. And so needless to say, I had to change every aspect of my life. I had to do a whole 360 flip of my life and replace every negative action and thought with positive ones. And it wasn't until I did that my life started changing, and it started progressing forward in a positive and spiritual way. And taking time, like it says in this little chapter that I read, that little paragraph, that in that exercise that they're going to do with the meditation, that one lady decided that she knew that she was going to have to give something up to replace it with meditation. So, I have to take a daily inventory of my life, of the things that I do on the daily basis. And, I figure, I ask myself, okay, what are you doing right now? What is the actions that you're doing and the things that you're thinking, are they positive, and are they moving you forward in the things that you need to do to further your spirituality, further your recovery, further your financial situation, further, to one step closer to the goals that you set for yourself. I got to do all of that. And if I would have brought one of those negative aspects to my current life and my current situation, that is for me as an addict, is it's an obstacle that's in the road that I may not be able to get over. You know what I mean? I may not be able to veer around that pillar there of negativity. And so I keep it a point to always have these positive thoughts. And that's the thing, is that you're not going to be able to always have positive thoughts, because that's just of who we are. Our environment is allowing our brain to just take in everything that we see, and it's toxic. So you're not going to be able to stop that process. But the beauty of one of the things that we, and you and me both, have, is that we have the free will to choose. We have the free will to choose what thought process that we're going to put into action. And I know through personal experience that if I have these negative thoughts and these, processes of negative thinking, then I know that my actions will be negative. So I make it a point to, whenever I start getting all these a bunch of negative thoughts in my mind, it's a red flag for me. So I know, it could be anywhere that I'm at. I can zoom into a meditation, even if it's for 2 minutes. You know what I mean? When you get yourself and subconsciously and consciously know that you're thinking this, and then start bringing thoughts into your mind that are positive, and say, okay, let's get back on track here. And whether it's me picking up this book and reading a little bit, or me clicking on a video and watching a podcast of some encouraging words, or me just dropping everything and going to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, or an Alcoholic Anonymous meeting, or go call somebody in my peer support groups that I attend, anything like that, is a positive action that will switch your mind to thinking positive, and it just furthers you in your journey of positivity and spirituality. So it's an ongoing process. It's not something that you're going to do just one time and voila, you're cured or whatever. No, this is a daily repetitive practice that you got to do every single day of your life. You know what I mean? No matter what it is that you're trying to do. I mean, it could be if you want a better job, if you want a different relationship, or if you want to fix the one that you're currently in, then you have to do things every single day to work on that in a positive way. You know what I mean? And it's scientifically proven that when people do think positive things for 7 days straight and do this on a repetitive basis, it remaps your wiring, your thinking, and your thought process. So what that means is that if I do something for 7 days and this is what I'm thinking for 7 days straight, that's a new roadmap that just got wired into my neurotransmitters in my brain. In other words, that's never going to go away, because that's something that you thought, it's registered in your brain, and it's always going to be there. So now anytime that you think positive, well, guess what pops up in your brain neurotransmitters brings up this screen of that positive map road, and you know which way to go, and you know how to act, you know how to talk, you know how to feel. You know what I mean? You understand what I'm saying? So it's a great, in other words, you're on the right frequency that you're supposed to be in, according to Mother Earth, the cosmos, your divinity, your spirituality. All of that stuff comes into play, and I don't want to get too deep into that, but it all works in line. And when you hear people say that, oh, you need to get your energy back on track, and that's exactly what it means. You know what I mean? Because you and I are people who are perfect. You know what I mean? We're made, the way we're made in a divine way that is perfect. There's nothing wrong with us. You know what I mean? That's how we're made. And unfortunately for us, because we have a mind and a subconscious mind, that is the wall or the force field that kind of hazes our view of which way we're going, how we act, what we do. You know what I mean? And that all just comes from the environment that we're in. You know what I mean? So if I would have stayed in that dark realm, if I would have stayed living in the motels and living in the little tent communities and living in the bandos and just kept staying with the people that I was in, that little community that I was involved in, if I would have stayed there, then guess what? My thought process would be exactly that. It would be negative things. It would be trying to do licks to go get more drugs. It would be, what am I going to do to get high again? And, you just stay there. And it's that hamster on a wheel type, mind thought process, because you just keep doing it. And for me, man, that lasted 5 years. You know what I mean? When I relapsed and went back into that world, man, I stayed there for 5 years. And my thought process, I can remember thinking every single day, waking up, okay, where's my bowl? That was my routine. And what am I going to do to get more? And I didn't care what I had to do to do it. You know what I mean? You get into this, I don't give a F mode thought process, and the results therein are exactly that. Right? It's just chaos. And but by the grace of God, I was able to, have a moment that was rock bottom for me, if you will. And I knew that I had to renunciate something in my life, and I had to give up something in my life for it to change. And for me, unfortunately, for me, the change was drastic. There's some people can only change one thing and be good, and some people, can just stop at a drop of a hat. But for me personally, my journey was I had to drastically change everything. Nothing that I do today is something that I was doing back then. Everything I do today is positive and is with a good vibration. It's good with it has to do with recovery. It has to do with spirituality. It has to do with being mindful. It has to do with having enlightenment, with having this just beautiful positive thought process. And I know that if I wouldn't involve myself in those types of thought processes, or involve myself in a recovery community, or involve myself in a faith-based community, then my life would be still back there in the darkness. And I'm just grateful that I was able to eventually get clear-headed and able to recognize red flags and recognize what I had to change, and where for me to go to where I wanted my life to go in a positive and spiritual direction. So it's great, you know what I mean? I'm grateful that I was able to do that, and me doing these podcast videos is just part of my service work, and it's part of my therapy. It's part of my recovery, because it allows me to share. It allows me to share stories that have helped me with things that has helped me along the way to get to where I'm at today. You know what I mean? And I've been in and out of different types of programs that have to do with drugs and alcohol and mental and those types of things, whether it was the abuse of drugs, or whether it was abuse of alcohol, whether it was PTSDs, whether it was childhood traumatic experiences, whether it was, dealing with anger or depression or suicidal thoughts, all those things. I've been in and out of programs since 1987, you know what I mean? And and I'm grateful that, hey, I'm here today sober, and that I don't have to be still, in that darkness. And by no means is it is it something that's going to happen overnight. You know what I mean? I know a lot of people want things, especially in the society we live in today. Everybody wants things now, and unfortunately, a life of happiness, a life of recovery, a life of spirituality isn't something that's going to just happen in a drop of a hat. It's not something that, you just pour water and instantly you're there. It's just something that you're going to have to macro manage every single day. In other words, you're going to have to do a little bit every single day until you get rid of all those negative thought processes and all those negative actions, and and replace them with spiritual and positive ones, and then it'll start coming. And for me, it took a while, but I'm glad that I'm doing it, and I'm glad that I'm living it, and I'm glad that I'm working it on a daily basis, and that's just part of my routine now, and it's just who I am. I had to change myself. It's just like a whole identity change. You know what I mean? I'm not that same person that I was when I was in the addiction. You know what I mean? I'm totally different, and I'm still the same. Well, not even physically, because I man, when I was in the addiction, man, I was weighing about 160 pounds and just not in great health. You know what I mean? In and out of the emergency room and that sort of thing. But I now today sit here with you. I'm back up to 190 pounds, and I'm exercising, and I'm eating right, and I'm trying to stay healthy, and I'm doing the actions, and thought processes are healthy. I'm not putting things in my body that I know are killing me, like I was when I was in the addiction. So it's just great. But yeah, so I just wanted to share that with you guys, that word, renunciation in that book, in that chapter, that you're gonna have to give some things up. You know what I mean? And just know that. But just know that when you give something up that's negative, replace it with something that's positive. And I can guarantee you, man, if you do that consistently on a daily basis, your life will start turning in a different direction, man. Your mentality will start, thinking in a different way, and you'll be amazed at what happens. But I guess that's going to be it for this episode, man. If you would, please, at this time, give me a thumbs up, man. Maybe give me a comment. If you would, please, hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you a thing. All you got to do is tap that button and share my channel, man. And just know that when you do share my channel and tap that subscribe button, that you'll be helping out another veteran, another homeless person, another person dealing with PTSDs, another person dealing with childhood traumatic experiences, another person dealing with anger and sadness and depression and suicidal thoughts, because my brothers and sisters, I had to deal with all those things at one point in time in my life, and that's why I do this podcast, to share and help out the addict who still suffers and anybody who's in the struggle. And yeah, so if you would, please share my channel, and I guess until the next time, When the Smoke Clears, I am the Recovery Plug.